Coming up on the GRIMM Exchange.
Memory loss in horror films, how do filmmakers use it in storytelling, and what's it like to play a character with amnesia?
And let's talk WOLFMAN with the team behind Loom, one of the latest releases on Grimmfest TV.
And today's guest reviewer, Ilan Sheady, is here to talk about a must-see this year, Alive. This and more on today's episode of
The GRIMM Exchange.
Hey horror fans, I'm Mariam.
And I'm Marcus. Welcome to your one-stop shop for all your horror entertainment news needs.
It's time to kick off today's show with the latest horror news.
Issa Lopez, the creative genius behind Tigers Are Not Afraid, is set to direct and write Our Lady of Tears for Blumhouse. The film is an adaptation of an epic magazine article called The Haunting of Girlstown, which was written by Daniel Hernandez and published by Vox. The film focuses on a supernatural-rooted mass hysteria epidemic which spread through an all-girls Catholic boarding school in Mexico in 2007. For some, this next story will bring joy. For others, the complete opposite. 2001 horror hit The Others is getting a remake. For those not familiar, the film starred Nicole Kidman and Doctor Who actor Christopher Eccleston. In it, Kidman plays a widow who, under the threat of a disease which causes photosensitivity, hides her children away in a creepy mansion, only to discover that the mansion is haunted. Currently, there's no release date for this remake. Ryan Murphy is one of the kings of TV at the moment, with American Horror Story renewed for more seasons, his successful Netflix shows The Politician in Hollywood, and a new season of campy horror comedy Scream Queens on the way. You'd question how he even has time to make more. But he clearly does, as American Horror Story gets a spin-off series. The anthology series will be titled American Horror Stories, and each episode will be a 1-hour self-contained story in itself. It's expected that American Horror Story favourites will appear. A new horror game is coming to PC, which takes gaming back to basics. World of Horror is a 1-bit, yes, you heard me right, 1-bit game which is a tribute to the horror works of Lovecraft and Japanese manga. In the game, a deck of cards helps you choose the outcome and direction of the game. On game service Stream, the synopsis for the game reads, "In a small seaside town of Japan, the population's sanity is dwindling and otherworldly grotesque creatures terrorize those who call the place home. In World of Horror, it's the end of the world and the only solution is to confront the terror reigning over the apocalypse." Sounds fun. Despite their characters never meeting, Jason Momoa and Peter Dinklage are best known for being in the hit TV show Game of Thrones, and have both gone on to do great things since their appearances. They're now set to star together in Legendary's upcoming action horror movie Good, Bad and Undead. Momoa is to play a vampire, while Dinklage will play vampire hunter Van Helsing. The project is said to be based on an original idea by Damien Shannon and Mark Swift, writers of Freddy vs. Jason and the 2009 reboot of Friday the 13th. MGM has bought David Robert Mitchell's new superhero project Heroes and Villains. There's very little information on the project at the moment, other than it will be a new take on superheroes. Mitchell is on board to produce and direct from his own script, and casting is said to begin shortly. And finally, we kind of come full circle. There is still debate in certain parts of the world as to whether face coverings are needed, but most people have taken to wearing them anyway. Some stick to traditional coverings, and others have been a little more fashionable in what they wear. Friday the 13th and Dawn of the Dead special effects legend Tom Savini, however, is giving you the opportunity to look like Jason Voorhees with his amazing half-hockey mask. You can now go and creep out the old folks while you shop. I'm going to order one right now. And those are your headlines. Now let's talk about memory loss in horror films. We've seen numerous films use this plot device, but how is it used right, and what are filmmakers trying to achieve? Plus, we have a little chat to Alive cast members Camille Stops and Thomas Cocquerel about their experiences playing amnesia patients.
Warning: the next segment will contain spoilers for the following films. Countless movies have been made about memory loss over the years. But how many of those are horror films? Although amnesia feels like it should have its own subgenre of horror, it's not a popular theme. Usually memory loss is a storytelling device which lends itself to thrillers, and rather bizarrely, romantic comedies. A popular example of memory loss is the film Memento. In it, Leonard suffers from short-term memory loss after being attacked. He knows his mission is to find the man who killed his wife and get revenge, but he can't make new memories. The way the story is told reflects his memory loss, which go back in time piecing together the puzzle of his situation. And just like Leonard, we're training our brains to learn in a new way. Withholding information from the viewer puts us in the protagonist's position. We are instantly hooked. We too are investigating. But Memento is unique as it deals with a different type of memory loss, and this is where it differs from horror films that use it for the storyline. Take, for example, how differently the characters in Alive react to their situation. Waking up in a sanitarium with sustained injuries, the two patients are terrified because their entire lives are a blank slate. In Memento, Leonard acts relatively calm because memories of who he was anchor him in his situation. But not letting us in on the circumstances in Alive, the audience is invested in their struggle, which creates a sense of panic about what is going to happen next. Actor Angus McFadden recently spoke of an accident he once had on set, where for 10 minutes he had no idea who he was. Quote, "There is nothing more terrifying than losing your identity. There was something truly disconcerting, the overwhelming sense of panic that overcomes you when you realize you don't know who you are." End of quote. McFadden's Alive co-stars Camille and Thomas Cocquerel share their experiences of what it's like to play characters with amnesia.
With amnesia, not knowing anything about where he'd come from and how he got to this place, locked in this hospital per se. I feel like I was lucky having my character background, waking up in a state where he couldn't speak and couldn't actually talk. For me and for the male patient, his beginning of his journey really came about in a more physical way. I'd read the scripts really 2 weeks before starting it, was on the plane within a week, and really was thrown into it. So in terms of playing a character with amnesia, not knowing where I'd come from and what had happened, and also the level of fear that was instilled in the performance.
So looking at what is the feeling? What is it to wake up and come to and to not know where you are, what's going on, who this person is beside you, to have all of those questions and to be able to process it? You're just looking for a solid foundation, and somehow all these ideas and thoughts kind of worm their way through your brain and then surface in whatever way. I think everything comes down to instinct. What are your defaults? How does your brain program to work without, it's going back to instincts and like primal behaviors. I think when you take away all your foundation of who you are, which we as people, we find identity in our friends, in our parents, our family, people on the street, what we like, what we don't like. We like to categorize things and define things. And so when you're waking up from a vulnerable state, you're in a position where you're stripped down to pure instinct.
The idea of memory and identity being one and the same is examined closely in the sci-fi horror movie Dark City. A man called John Murdoch wakes up in a hotel room next to a murdered woman. He has no memory of who he is and why he is there. We find out that the citizens of this city are being manipulated by aliens trying to understand humanity through experiments by switching people's memories. John has become immune to the experiments, and by breaking free of the memories fed to him, he has found enlightenment. Memory loss is the very thing that sets him free. Done with a classic film noir style, Dark City is a unique look at what makes us human. Influences of Dark City are numerous, and Alfred Hitchcock's 1945 classic Spellbound will be one of them. In it, Gregory Peck plays a doctor in an institution, but is not what he appears to be. He has amnesia and believes he has murdered someone and taken their identity. Unlike the previously mentioned movies, nothing physical has happened to him to cause his amnesia. It is a direct result of a traumatic experience. His body has shut down as a defense mechanism, or as he puts it, You put a horrible thing behind a closed door. By not knowing his past and whether he indeed killed someone, we're not sure who to trust. Our emotions are orchestrated by Hitchcock at every turn, holding us in suspense for the grand finale. In the more modern classic movie franchise Nightmare on Elm Street, amnesia pops up again. The last surviving kid of Springwood leaves town unscathed by Freddy. Well, almost. John Doe hits his head and forgets his past. What John doesn't realize is that Freddy has let him go.
Me, you idiot! I'm your memory!
Here, amnesia is used as a messy plot device. Freddy wants John to come back with more kids for him to terrorize, including Freddy's own child. Yay! Family reunion. Although it's a ridiculous plot, amnesia does add to the film's nightmarish atmosphere. In comparison, memory loss in David Lynch's Mulholland Drive is used as an almost aesthetic element, adding to the dreamlike state of the movie. After a car crash, the sole survivor, Rita, walks away with no memory and hides out in a nearby apartment. Nothing here makes sense, but it doesn't have to. What we are seeing is unnerving and blurs the line of art house and horror. It is a common theme in Lynch's work, seen in Twin Peaks and Lost Highway, a Lynchian trope that keeps us wondering, what is real? But who wants reality? In a classic episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Tabula Rasa, memory loss is used as a comedy relief to break the tension of a very weighty episode. Reality in Sunnydale has become very dark for Buffy, and by proxy, for the viewer. In this episode, a spell goes awry, and all our favorite characters lose their memory and need to figure out who they are and why vampires are chasing them. It's well timed for us as Buffy fans who need a break. Even if we know things will get serious again, we enjoy the short respite. Overall, memory loss is an effective tool when used in horror. It allows us to look at ourselves and humanity as a whole. It can give us some scares, keep us in suspense, confuse us, and sometimes make us laugh, if just for a minute.
And now it's time to go to my favourite place, the Grimm Zone.
Today's Grimm Zone is sponsored by Headcinema Productions. Headcinema Productions is a service provider for all things horror, whether it's music, photography, or video production. If it's terrifying and weird, they've got you covered. Headcinema Productions, the elegant art of scary and strange.
In our digital era, so many of us have learnt useful skills at home. More than ever, we have become particularly resourceful in how we create art with the means available to us in our four walls. So, for the sake of inspiration, we have created our own little version. If you too want to make the most of your time at home and get the chance to win some cool prizes, show us what you've got.
So get your camera phones, repurpose your home, film, upload to YouTube, and send us a link to GRIMMZONE at grimmfest.com with the subject Cabin Fever.
Amongst the latest masterpieces coming out of the horror industry, what titles should we be keeping an eye out for? Every episode we have a different guest reviewing the freshest fruits of the horror market. With that, we'd like to welcome Ilan Sheady from Uncle Frank Productions and reviewer on Horror DNA.
Thank you for that introduction. I am Ilan Sheady and I am going to be talking to you today about the film Alive. Alive is a suspenseful psychological mystery in which someone, not played by Milla Jovovich, wakes up in a strange location with no memory of who they are. A man wakes in a hospital with complete memory loss, partially paralysed and an inability to speak. A doctor is forcibly keeping him there, as well as a woman who is also not played by Milla Jovovich. Together, the two try to escape, all while their memories and motor functions slowly start returning to them. But who are these people, and how will they react when they realise who they are? Alive is an incredibly tense psychological thriller in the style of Pandorum and Saw, with a stronger focus on character. Though nothing is known about the minimal number of characters, the story forces you to make assumptions based on fragments of information like breadcrumbs. Director Rob Grant perfectly uses the expectations and preconceptions of the horror genre against the viewer, and when it finally pulls back the curtain, it leaves you with a cocktail of emotion that questions everything you've experienced. In the history of cinema, no movie has demanded a second viewing as much as Alive. Was I manipulated into feeling what I did? Or was that my natural instinct and prejudices? And as a bonus, like every great horror movie, it offers you a great conversation afterwards. Actors Thomas Cocquerel and Camille both managed to portray characters that I sided with, regardless of how little I knew them. The fragments of personality that showed underneath was enough to empathize with and support. Meanwhile, the great Angus McFadden from Equilibrium manages to traverse both creepily caring and creepily intimidating in equal measures throughout. Special effects are used sparingly, apart from one moment, but when you see it, oh my god, is it effective and impressive. Someone must have thrown all the budget at that. I highly recommend Alive to anybody who likes a bit of intelligence to their horror.
Thanks, Ilan. Make sure you check out his amazing design work on UncleFrankProductions.com and reviews on HorrorDNA.com.
Grimmfest TV is a fantastic platform to watch the work of exceptional filmmakers in the horror industry. Whilst we're very excited to see these films, we are at least equally excited to meet the people behind these productions. So let's see if we can get a hold of someone. Ah yes, the Grimmfest basement. What have we here? Ooh, Loom. This looks fun. Kevin Rothlisberger, director of Loom. Hello.
Hello, Miriam, my love. How are you?
Brock Russell, producer of Loom. Why, hello.
Hey, Miriam, how you doing? Hope all is well.
David Christopher Pitt, DP of Loom. Is that you?
Miriam, hello. How are you?
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Loom?
Loom is a throwback 1978 Wolfman film. It's done in the style of some of Carpenter's best work in the late 70s, early 80s. Same with a kind of a Spielbergian vibe of his late 70s, early 80s work. It's a little bit of a Tobe Hooper vibe in there. That's what we were going for on this one. But it's very EC comic, and it's just a blast. Very aware of itself, but we put a lot of reverence in it. So we hope you guys enjoy it if you watch it.
Now, I can't quite put my finger on it, but what is it that makes Loom so special?
What I think makes Loom special is the fact that we really tried to make this feel like a lost film from the late 70s, whether that was mono roars from the Wolfman, or to feel like 16 millimeter film, 35 millimeter film, or just restrict ourselves to the equipment we could use to try and feel like we were actually shooting this in this time period. We shot on lenses that were around in the 70s and popular in the 70s. We shot with a lot of tungsten lamps. Of course, we did have to use things like sky panels or LEDs to speed things up, but we tried to really restrict ourselves so this feels the most authentic it possibly can.
Question. What makes a good Wolfman movie?
The way we approached Loom in regards to the Wolfman aspect is to always keep it about the internal struggle that, in this case, Adam, our protagonist, is struggling with. We found that the internal struggle that one faces every day, whether it be that the demons that you face, the demons that are inside of you that you don't want to release, and the hard questions you don't want to answer, and having those come to the surface in the worst way possible. In this case, a killer Wolfman is something that we found to be the most interesting aspect and something that we didn't want to forget about.
Ooh, this is starting to sound exciting. I could really go with a teaser right now. I'm generally sold, but how about the good stuff? Give me some fun facts.
Fun fact, Loom was actually sound designed at Skywalker Ranch, which was one of the greatest moments of my life.
Fun fact, Kevin had these gigantic sideburns for the movie, and whenever he put on his prosthetics, they would still kind of puff out. And he just was this wolf man with these giant burns, and he kind of had this swagger when he walked, so he earned the nickname the Disco Wolf.
Fun fact, the contacts that we actually got for the Wolfman were actually made from the same company and designers for Michael Jackson's Thriller, the cat eyes.
Fun fact, we had old beer cans, authentic 1970s old beer cans on set. We finally found Grain Belt Beer in Minnesota, and they were nice enough to loan some old beer cans, ones that had been drained from the bottom, but the pull tab, the old vintage 1970s pull tab, was still intact. So that was really important to us.
As always, it has been a pleasure talking to you guys, and for you at home, if you want to see Loom, go online to Grimmfest TV and watch it for yourself. If you would like to see an extended version of this interview, please check the link in the description down below.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one. Enjoy.
So long, Miriam. Take care. Jeez.
That was fun.
Well, there you have it. That concludes today's episode of The Grimm Exchange. Make sure to support the horror industry by watching films, playing games, and reading books.
Also, don't forget to go online and check out Grimmfest TV for some horror film goodness.
A big thanks to our sponsors, and we'll see you next time on
The Grimm Exchange.
Bye.
It's okay.